Hi, welcome to One Word a Day. I'm Sophie, your pilot into the universe of Chinese. We are going to continue our discovering journey in unpacking one Chinese expression a day. Yesterday, we talked about some extreme expression of self-cursing, self-accusing that warrant 10,000 times of death. Imagine that. So watch my last episode of in what context, like who exactly do such extreme self-cursing. Okay, today we continue with 万 in 毛主席万岁. Okay, you notice there are 5 characters up here, so that means it's not exactly a set expression, like time-honored classical Chinese expression. Actually, it's a contemporary one, and it's the biggest propaganda slogan in China in a probably 20, 30, or 40 years ago, because Mao Zedong is a particular figure in Chinese recent contemporary history, the founding father of the current China, like a contemporary mainland China. And it's in China, in the West, known as Chairman Mao. And this is how it's expressed in Chinese, Mao Zedong. And then, okay, instead of 10,000 deaths, right, this is 10,000 years to live. And Chinese simply use 10,000 because it's a huge number in the ancient scale. Back then, a K, 1,000 is like a big deal, and 10,000 is like the upper limit of imagination. That's a humanly relatable big number. So 10,000 years is like forever. Chinese way to say you live forever. Okay, let's do one by one. Mao, I'm super happy when I see this icon because I've been struggling to understand why human hand symbol, 5-finger hand symbol, have to tilt the middle finger. Okay, middle finger is okay. Middle finger raising is a very Western sign language almost. Before I came to the U.S., or actually before I came to the U.S., I saw it in movies, so I get it. But it was not popularized in China, at least back then. So middle finger has no significance in Chinese, right? But somehow Chinese hand symbol tilt the middle finger, like here. This looks like a hand, right? The middle finger the other way, to the right, point to the right. And I was like, why? Now I know why, because another character that looks in a similar structure have to bend to the other way. So it's like bending this way. So now when it's bending toward the left, it's a totally different thing. It's not related to hand anymore. It is a visual depiction of the furs or the hairs grows on top of animals, I guess. Mostly it's animal fur. So these are just simply visual depiction of the furs over there. And to differentiate it from the hand symbol, so somebody intentionally add this slant line from the top. So instead of falling toward the right, this is falling toward the left to show it's actually the fur. We're not talking about the hand. It's a differentiator. Okay, so that's Mao. And I know when it first came out to the US, I learned that the Western, at least in a entertainment culture, Mao was sound similar to meow. So it's like a cat, a kitty. It's actually cutified as figure, as a political figure. That's, I mean, the West to do, like kind of to tease their leaders, right? So they apply that to the Chinese culture, which like nobody in China ever wanted to, or at least in public, to parody leader or deride, or cannot. That's a no-no. So when I first came over, I realized, oh, there was such a sound connection of Mao to meow. And meow, the kitty is actually a furry friend of humans, right? And that fur can circle back to what the original Chinese family name, which is also a Chinese name for fur, for the hairs on an animal mostly. So this is an interesting cultural looping over there. Okay, 主席, 主, we have main character over there. So this, you can see it's this dot thing is almost artistically rendered like a teardrop shape, right? So ancient times, this is candle holder. So this is the candle light, and the below it is the stand. So this, according to scholars, we have to come up to with some understanding of why this means main, because this shows it is the say that the light, I guess in a Western understanding of if somebody serve as the light, that means that person is the the idea, the inspiration for others. So that person serves as the main, almost like the mastermind, right? The mind influencer. So that extended into this idea of main, because that's the source of light or source of information or understanding. Okay, so there's simply a candle stand that we extended into the idea of a thought leader. So that's the light. Okay, 习, we have 3 components in this character. This upper left corner has always been the habitual way in the Chinese language to frame it in the upper left to mean higher ground. And then we have lower ground framed this way. So higher ground, but we add this tiny little dot. Just one thing changed the whole frame, meaning of that frame. So without the dot, it actually means somewhere in the wilderness on high ground. Imagine a cliff, right? That looks just like a cliff, and that means that. With the chimney, the little thing on the top, that actually domesticate the space. It means human living quarters. So it's no longer somewhere out there in the wilderness. Is humanly built structure, a shelter. So a shelter, we also have the food dome, like a enclosure with a chimney. So that's just a living space with door, windows, so the whole space enclosed. But here, without this side, that means it's open space. Half of them is open. And I would imagine, because nowadays, in contemporary China, it's hard to see. Like contemporary buildings are all like boxy. Like it's a global way of building things efficiently, cheaply, right? But in ancient times, like how can we imagine the ancient way of living, how their building looks like? Because Chinese architecture is mostly made of wood, so we don't get to preserve a lot of wood structures over time. But one thing we can imagine, like how does a half-sided domestic space look like, would be imagine the Japanese architecture. One, they have this sliding door, slide open, right? It's domestic space. It's your like a living room, a bedroom, all in one, right? That big continuation of big space under the roof, right? So that chimney kind of signified there things human build roofing on top, but half side of it is facing the nature, facing outside. And that's the image created over here. That's relatable. I think the Japanese culture heavily influenced by the Tang Dynasty. So that's about 1,200 years ago, and they preserve it so much better than what's happening in China. So that would be an image relate to this half shelter, like a half space opening architecture. And then we have this 20 side. So being 20, okay, we have one horizontal line and it's kind of like a bow shape, right? So originally it was 10. 10 simply is a cross because it came from the ancient roping record-keeping habit that to keep a number 10, people tie a knot on the rope so that if you untie it, there are traces, you can tell, like there were bending on the material, so you can, it's hard to cheat. So it's almost kind of serves like a permanent record, right? So once you tie a knot, that means number 10. And then we have this cross and another cross, that's 20, right? And to make them like into one unit instead of like 10 and under 10, it looks like scattered. So it's connected by this bottom line. So that's the origin of 20, simply 10 next to each other, but connected at the bottom. Okay, so 20. So sometimes 20 means people. We didn't say that, but imply that because this is like somebody's home, right? Housing with half side facing outside. And then here, this is a fabric. So this vertical line connected with this concave shape facing down this dome thing, and then this is the symbol for fabric. Not going into detail of that, but it looks kind of drapey, right? So it's fabric, 20 people under the roof. That simply pull up the image of kind of a living space. Okay, somebody's living room with 20 people, so it's a gathering. And then this fabric means on the gathering, the mattress, or not exactly mattress, the mat, got fabric edges, so it's bordered by the fabric wrapping. Otherwise, I mean the material without the border can disintegrate, right? So to protect them, so things are bordered with fabric. And that the image of that depicts the mat. So xi originally came from this mat, this ancient practice of invite your guests over and then everybody sitting on a big mat. I guess you can still see some of that in Hawaii, big mat. Or okay, if you see the latest Avatar 2, right? So it's a sea culture, but it's kind of like a tribe, right? And then in their little hut thing, it's a whole mat. It's not like separated by different spaces, like a contemporary living, but everything is within one dome and a mat. And if you have a guest over, imagine 20 people sitting on that mat. And then if it's bordered by fabric, that means somebody who is, well, according to scholars, somebody well-to-do, at least in their society, that they can afford to use decorative borders to surround the mat. So the whole thing is a mat in ancient times. And then eventually it extend into, so this gathering place. And then when it's gathering, there gotta be a leader or a host, something like that, right? And it extended into this contemporary chair, because ancient times there was no chair over there, okay? So there's just this gathering. And when we do have chairs, then this gathering becomes like people sit on chair instead of sit on mat. So this image from mat extended into the contemporary furniture, which is the chair. But the gathering image of this 20 people sitting under the same roof, talking about something, right? That's the continuation of the meaning. That means it's a gathering, right? Okay, so 主席 means the main chair. So basically somebody sitting at the end of the table, somebody who is the authority, or the most important people, a thought leader of this group of 20 people or whatever number of people. So that's what 主席 means. And it actually can be pretty nicely converted to chairman, because chairman basically is somebody who's sitting on the chair, but the main chair, the leader position of the chair in this gathering, right? That's what chairman is about. And the 主席 simply is the flip of that. Now that's talking about, that's the main chair. Okay, so 毛主席 simply chairman Mao, right? Okay, 万岁 10,000 times. And I put the mass symbol over there to show you my understanding of, okay, so here is a 10 without the upper side of the rope. So this is a 10, kind of looking like that now, and then have this 2 curves. And each of them, I will imagine it's to the 2nd degree, and then to the 2nd degree of the whole thing again. So that's 4, we end up with 4 zeros. That's how I would like to interpret this image of 1, because it's super simple, but it actually means 4 zeros involved. So we have to kind of figure out how from 10, it becomes 10,000, right? Okay, now, sui. If you can see, I kind of unpack it for you because it's hard to verbally describe. I have to put images up there. It's made up of these 2 icons. Now, can you tell how it's packed together? We have the bu on the left and the xu on the right. The bu simply is, this is the right foot. This is the left foot. This is the right foot put in front of the left foot. And the 2 foot symbols stacking up together actually means spatially. 1 foot put in front of each other, that means somebody is walking. And we just freeze, kind of take a snapshot of the walking at the moment of the right foot is in front of the left foot. And from that, you can almost tell that we can probably extrapolate that ancient times, most people walk in with the right foot first, step first, maybe. So this is the footsteps, at least visualize that. And then the xu is a pretty abstract concept. I have spent quite some time, but it's such a deep hole to dig into, because we're talking about ancient Chinese philosophy classifies things in different ways. So there was one particular way that's dividing the whole earthly affairs or whatever happening on Earth into 12 major categories. We call it earthly 12 earthly branches, 地支, so 12 branches. So it's a classification of things. And this is the branch 11. So branch 11 is corresponding to the time of 7 to 9 o'clock evening. And then I can see that here, this right portion is the weaponry back then. And it's almost like the weaponry kind of on the shelf. And this is an indicator added there to actually mean before there was a fire symbol over there. And the fire symbol below this horizontal line. So this horizontal line is supposed to be the ground, the ground level. Just one horizontal line to mean it's the fire is underground, because that number 11 of this classification system also matched to, I think, September, according to the lunar calendar. Or actually, no, November, right? Because it's 11, so it's November, the month November, which is kind of pretty cold time when the heat of the summer finally kind of chased down underground. And so above ground is all chill or coldness of the winter, and the fire, in ancient understanding, is put underground. So that's the interpretation of why this horizontal line is there, to signify that this is November. This is the number 11 on that 12th branch of earthly affairs. Okay, so we can kind of see why it's made up of this too, to become the concept of year. Because walking means things are progressing, right? Things are changing. And 11 is almost toward the very end of this year and in a transition to the next year when the heat getting back up to the ground, right? So this very end of the year plus the progressing, almost like, okay, that's kind of Q4 or it's end of the year. And that's corresponding to the concept of a whole year. And of course, Chinese doesn't really have plural forms. We don't it's not even in our concept. If it's a 10,000, automatically it's multiple years, right? So we don't need to signify it, it's implied. But in English, we have to be grammatically correct. So I put an S over there. The whole thing simply translated in English is long live Chairman Mao. 10,000 doesn't matter up there. It's the biggest number in ancient times imagination that signifies infinity, because who will live to 10,000 years? Right? It's unimaginable, it's infinity. So it's long live. It's a good wish to have Chairman Mao live forever, but we all know he died in 1976, just like the rest of us. Nobody is mortal. And I want to point out, this is one of the first things when I first pick out an English book, when I first start to learn English, this is the very first phrase that came into my vision. And of course, at that time, I have no clue, like what is long, what is live? It's totally foreign to me, but this is the first thing textbook want to brand into students' mind. Even if they're learning English, they have to first learn this important phrase to Chinese. So that's why I say this is probably the best known propaganda phrase in Chinese culture. 毛主席万岁. Okay, cashing into the currency of thinking by one word a day by Sophie. See you next.